here with maritimegardening.com, and I'm out here planting some onion sets. I had a viewer recently ask me to do a video on planting onion sets, and it's time to plant them, so I thought I'd do the video. So, when to plant, what's an onion set? Onion set is onions that you buy in bags like this, and they look like tiny onions. And basically how these are partly grown onions. They're onions that are grown and then pulled out of the ground and set to cure, and they're in a dormant stage. You plant them, and after a week or so they set roots out and they start growing, and they'll give you onions after a few months. This is the Sturion variety that I got from Vessie's Seeds. The easiest way to know when to plant them is if you order them from Vessie's, when they mail them to you, that's when it's time to plant them. But more generally, you can plant onions, for me, using my dandelion planting schedule. You can check out that article on that for free. That's basically when I plant everything, and when I recommend you plant things, at least for my growing zone. So when you see dandelion greens poking up out of the ground, that's when it's time to plant onion sets. And you can plant them at any point from when you start seeing the dandelion greens start to grow, from then to when you see the dandelion yellow flowers start to appear. The earlier you plant them, the more vigilant you have to be, because if once they start sending up their green shoots, there's a frost. A light frost won't bother those green shoots, and I've got onion, basically, another way to look at it is if you've got garlic in your garden, when the garlic's growing, that's when they're the same family, that's when these are going to grow. And if you've got any kind of perennial onion like Egyptian walking onions, once you see them starting to grow, that's when onions are growing, so that's when you can plant these. That's another good general indicator. But with some varieties of onion, they're not as tough as garlic or Egyptian walking onions, and I've had this happen in the past. If you plant them and they start to grow and there's a hard frost, a very, very cold night, it can kill off the greens. In general, it won't kill the onion, so you have this growth, and if there's a hard frost, the growth will die back, but the onion will send up, there's energy stored in these bulbs, right? So the onion will just set up new greens, and hopefully there isn't another hard frost and they keep going. But if you plant them and you're keeping an eye on the weather, and the new greens are starting, if the new greens haven't come up yet, you don't have to worry about it. But if the new greens have come up and they're a certain, few inches tall, and you think there's going to be a frost, just put a tarp over them, put something over top of them for the night, and just baby them along a little bit until all risk of frost is gone. But you only have to cover them if you think there's going to be a frost, and only if they've started to grow. All I'm going to do here is plant mine. I'm going to mulch them. And that's another thing, the mulch kind of protects them until they push up above the mulch. But by mulching them, you reduce the risk of weeds. So let me show you what I'm doing here, and I'll explain it as we go. So I got a nice prepared bed here. You want to have good onions. You want good soil, good drainage. This is slightly raised, maybe 4 inches above grade, the actual soil level. Good fertile soil, good drainage, and all the sun you can give them, at least where I live. I think people don't prize onions the way they prize things like tomatoes and basil and things like that. So they tend to give onions a subpar spot. Like, look, I got a hill over there. You can see the sun is setting. That's west. I could plant onions there, but they're going to miss a couple hours of sun every day in the summer, right? So that's they'll grow there, but I'll get bigger onions here, assuming the soil is good. Just in anticipation of follow-up videos, because if you watch my garden tours, I give an update on everything. This bed, I grew squash in it last year, and it did really, really, really poorly. And I guessed, I didn't do a soil test, which is what you should do. I guessed that it did poorly because either the soil was lacking in nitrogen or it was too acidic. So this year I added manure, aged manure, about 1 inch to the whole thing, and worked it in. And I added some lime to deacidify the soil. The soil might not have been acidic, but basically this bed and this bed behaved like they were acidic. And I actually did an acidity test on this, very rudimentary one, and this soil was acidic, and both of these had the same soil, right? The soil for these 2 beds was the dirt that came out of the hole when I made this pond. Right? Both of these beds have a lot of that soil in them. So I'm guessing if this one was acidic, this probably was too. Anyway, long way of saying I don't know how well these are going to do this year. Assuming I've amended the soil well and it's, you know, got a reasonable pH, somewhere between 7 and 6, that sort of thing. It's got lots of sun. It's got the right composition of soil. Good spot. I can't stress enough, good soil, good sun. Lots of sun really matters for onions. Now, in terms of spacing, I just spaced them a handspan apart and I mulched the whole bed. You see how I've got these? These are garlic I planted last fall, right? I just lay them out a handspan apart in each direction, and I work a grid like that. And that's my handspan, which is about 9 inches, right? So if you got a narrower hand, you might need to, you know, I have a pretty wide handspan, so you just adjust. But about 9 inches, I find, is a good spacing for things like garlic and onions. So that's what I'm going to see how these are all mulched in between the garlic, and see how there's no weeds growing. Right, I planted this garlic and laid down those leaves last fall, right? Same with this garlic over here, right? That's coming up nice. So that's all I'm going to do here. I'm going to do the same thing. Plant the onion sets. So let me just put the camera somewhere and you know, get to work. So as a general rule, I put them a handspan in from the edge in both directions, right? So right about there ought to be good for my first one. You know, just moving rocks out of the way as I go. And it's easier just to lay a few out like this. What I like to do is pick out the big fat ones and plant those first, right? Fill up the space with the big fat ones. You see how I'm just spacing them out here, okay? So it's a tedious process, the spacing. So I'm just going to fast forward it, but this is all I do is I decide where they're going to go, okay? Okay, so now I've spaced them all out, and now the next step is to just push them all on the ground. You see I have some left over, so with these I just gather them up, put them back in the bag, and you save them. Notice how I basically left the teeniest ones, and I don't know if you could see this on camera when I was planting. I mean, this isn't a bad one here, it's nice and firm. But every once in a while you come across one that was kind of soft and mushy, or just looked like shriveled up and dead, you know, something like that, right? So, you know, if you've got options, here's one. This one is soft on the inside and shriveled up, so I don't bother planting those. But I'll put these aside because in a few weeks, these will all be up, right? You'll have these little 3 inch shoots coming up, and some of them just won't come up. Some of them will fail. It just happens. It's inevitable. I don't care where you get them. So I've got these in reserve for when I'll just stick these on the floor of my garage where it's really reasonably cool, and they can just hang out there for a few more weeks. They're fine. They can still be planted later on, right? So let's just go aside for that. To plant these, all you do, I just hold them and I sort of push them in. Right, this soil's been prepared. I just went over it with because I was working manure into it anyway. I took a small pickaxe, ran over the whole thing to work the manure into the soil, and I just smoothed it out with a rake, and you can see the rake marks. I just tamped it down with the rake. So the soil here has been firmed down, but it's still nice and soft so that I can easily just push them in like that. And you see I push them in just so that the tip is barely flush with the surface of the soil. See how it's just peeking out like that? That's what you want, right? You just want them, so it's almost like each set will tell you. So you're gentle. I'm moving this around with my fingers, right? But you're finding the depth they want to be. It's about an inch or so, you know, give or take 4 centimeters. It's like a little bit more than an inch, inch and a quarter. It also depends on the set, because most important thing is not the depth, it's that the set has been placed at a depth where its tip is level with, is flush with the soil, right? So once you get going, it's a fairly, you see how I protect it with my hand. So I'm not pushing on the set. My hands are moving the soil down, right? And then I'm just doing that, right? That's all you got to do, right? I mean, you can use tools for this, but your hands are fine, right? And you can go along pretty quickly. Alright, so that's a whole bed planted. There's supposed to be 100 in there. And by rough estimation, I got about 20 left. So I just planted 80 in this 8-foot by 8-foot bed. And I think that's a good spacing. In my experience, that'll work just fine. I guess I forgot to mention what direction I'd plant them. And you can see one end looks like that. And the other end usually has a kind of very tippy, tip-like shape to it. So the tippy part is the top, and the sort of rooty, root-like part is the bottom. So always plant them roots down, tip up. You can plant them sideways, you can plant them any direction, but I'm pretty confident that it makes some kind of difference since it's already an onion, and it's going to have a better shape if you plant them straight up and down with the tip up and the root part down. All right. Now all that's left to do with this is give it some water and get some mulch on there. So you noticed during the video I was fairly lackadaisical about how I lay these out. I mean, I spread them out, right? But I'm not worried about, I don't know why. I mean, the wind blows these things around a little bit and the onions always find their way through. I don't know why, but they do, okay? You saw the garlic, they grow the same way the onions do. It's got a stiff enough shoot that it sends up initially. I mean, think about how things work in nature, right? They just have a way of finding their way up through stuff. You want to keep these from blowing away. One thing to do is just have branches of trees you lay over the leaves. Right, there's still holes here. The onions will get up through this just fine. Okay, I recognize that everyone doesn't have infinite number of spruce boughs or alder boughs or whatever. So another good technique. I always have this wire remesh material. I use it for trellises. We just lay that down. It doesn't have to stay there all season, right? It just has to be there for a few rains. The rain, right, that pounding motion of the rain will settle the leaves out and pack them down. You can see that these leaves were put down last fall. They're still there. They were there all fall, all winter, and all spring. And that's through tropical storms and, you know, high winds and gusts and stuff like that. I know whenever I make a video, people talk about how much, it's really rainy where they live and it's really windy where they live. Well, this is Nova Scotia, Canada. We're in the Gulf Stream. We're on the North Atlantic. It's really rainy and really windy here too. I don't think it's the windiest or rainiest place in the world, but it's quite windy and quite rainy because it's a peninsula jutting out into the Gulf Stream of the North Atlantic. All right, anyway, this one has served its purpose. I don't expect these leaves to blow around too much now because they're all kind of pushed in place. So I'll just lift this wiry mesh up and stick it over there. Anyway, the sun's going down and it's time to go inside, get a hot drink, maybe watch something funny with my kids, that sort of thing. These onions are already, that didn't take long, right? About 80 onions planted, and I don't know, this video, the clock here says about 30 minutes, something like that. So, not a bad evening's work. And these are all the onions. I'm going to plant some green onions in a different bed. The little ones you'd use in stir fries and omelets and stuff like that. But in terms of onion bulbs, this is all I'm going to do. I plant a variety of things, and it's not enough onions to last the year. I have to plant, we use a ridiculous amount of onions. I would say in my home, it's rare that a day goes by that we don't eat something with onions in it. And for almost everything we cook, step one is cut up an onion and get it going, right? Whether it's a soup or a stir fry or any other sort of thing, right? We had chili tonight. Step one, get the onions going, right? Right? Brown the meat, get the onions going, right? Anyway, that's how I plant that's how I plant onion sets. I've tried planting them from seed. We have a shortened growing season here. You can do it here. There's ways to do it. But I find for just the convenience and ease of it, and I'm happy with this variety, Styrian onion, that these are just fine. Anyway, if you like this video, please like, share, subscribe. Check out my podcast at maritimegardening.com. Check out my weekly column at maritimegardening.substack.com, where you can read that article on planting dates and how to use the dandelion as an indicator of when to plant just about everything in your garden. Until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden. Thanks for watching. Hey, do you like getting free shipping? Then go to Vessies.com to buy whatever you need for your garden this year and use my coupon code GAVS24 to get free shipping as long as there's a pack of seeds in the order and there's no oversized items. Check out the description box of this video for details. You can buy everything you need from Vessies. They have seeds, fruit bushes and trees, soil amendments, pest solutions, tools, clothing, and lots of other stuff too. So yeah, if you want to help support everything I'm doing here and you like free shipping, and they sell something you need, buy it from them and use my coupon code. Happy gardening!